September 1944, Lorraine, France. The sky belonged to the sleek P-51 Mustangs and the heavy B-17 bombers. They were the stars of the war, fast, armored, deadly. But flying low over the treetops at a slow 70 miles per hour was the L-4 Grasshopper, Piper Cub. It wasn't a warplane, it was a toy. It was made of canvas, stretched over a light steel frame. It had a wooden propeller. It had no armor plating. A pilot could literally stick his hand through the wall of the fuselage. A single bullet from a German pistol could bring it down. Its job was boring, observation, spotting artillery, taking pictures. The pilots of these planes were frustrated. They watched German panzer columns moving below them, and they couldn't do anything about it. They were sitting ducks. But one pilot was different. Major Charles Bazooka Charlie Carpenter. Before the war, he was a history teacher and a football coach. He didn't like sitting on the sidelines. He looked at his fragile little plane, named Rosie the Rocketer. He looked at the German tanks destroying American infantry. And he decided that the rules of aviation needed to be rewritten. He didn't want to just watch the war. He wanted to fight it.
Carpenter went to the supply depot. He didn't ask for permission. He asked for bazookas. The M1 bazooka was an infantry weapon. It fired a 2.36-inch shaped charge rocket capable of punching through armor. It was designed to be fired from a soldier's shoulder. The supply officer laughed. "You want to put what on a plane made of fabric, Major? The backblast will set your tail on fire. The recoil will rip the wings off." Carpenter didn't listen. He was an American tinkerer. He and his mechanic got to work. It was pure garage engineering. They took 6 bazooka launchers. They didn't have mounting brackets, so they improvised. They used baling wire, duct tape, and scrap metal to strap 3 bazookas onto the struts of each wing. Then came the wiring. Carpenter rigged the ignition wires from the bazookas directly into his cockpit. He didn't have a sophisticated targeting computer. He duct-taped a toggle switch box to his dashboard. It was crude. It was dangerous. It was insane. If a rocket misfired, it would explode right next to the fuel tank. If the backblast hit the fabric skin of the plane, Carpenter would burn alive in seconds. But when he was finished, Rosie the Rocketer looked like a porcupine made of death. The other pilots gathered around the airfield. They were taking bets on how long Carpenter would survive. "He's gonna blow his own wings off," one pilot said. Carpenter climbed into the cramped cockpit. He flipped the switches. The tiny 65-horsepower engine sputtered to life. The plane was heavy. The aerodynamics were ruined by the tubes on the wings. Carpenter taxied down the mud. The plane bounced, struggled, and finally clawed its way into the air. He gained altitude. He spotted a test target, an abandoned German truck in a field. This was the moment of truth. Carpenter had to aim the entire plane to aim the rockets. He had to dive. He pushed the stick forward. The canvas plane screamed as it picked up speed. The ground rushed up. At 200 yards, he flipped the toggle switch. Whoosh! The first rocket left the tube. The plane shuddered from the recoil, but the wings stayed on. The rocket flew straight and true. It smashed into the truck. Boom! The truck disintegrated. Carpenter pulled up laughing. He hadn't just built a weapon. He had invented the concept of the attack helicopter 20 years before helicopters existed. He radioed the tower. "This is Rosie. The rockets work. Send me to the front."
The Hunting Ground. September 20th, 1944. The Battle of Aricourt. General Patton's Third Army was locked in a brutal tank duel with the German 5th Panzer Army. The fog was thick. The big fighter bombers, P-47s, were grounded. They couldn't see the targets, but Carpenter could. He flew slow and low under the fog layer.
He was hunting panthers and tigers. A Tiger tank is a 60-ton monster with 100 millimeters of frontal armor. It was the apex predator of the battlefield. Carpenter spotted a column of German armor moving through a forest road hidden from the high-altitude bombers. He had 6 rockets. The Germans had anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, and the main cannons of the tanks. It was a suicide run, a fabric moth attacking a steel dragon. Carpenter didn't care. He banked his plane and entered a steep dive directly at the lead tank. The German tank commander popped his hatch. He looked up. He saw the tiny plane. He probably laughed. He didn't know that the mad history teacher was coming to teach him a lesson about American ingenuity. Carpenter pushed Rosie into a 45-degree dive. The struts whistled in the wind. The fabric wings vibrated violently. The German Tiger tank commander swiveled his massive 88mm main gun, but the plane was too low, too slow, and too close. The big gun couldn't elevate fast enough. Carpenter waited until he could see the rivets on the tank's turret. 100 yards. He flipped the toggle switch taped to his dashboard. Whoosh, bang! 2 rockets launched simultaneously from the left wing. They didn't hit the thick front armor. They hit the top of the turret, the thinnest part of the tank, designed to protect only against rain and shrapnel. The shaped charges burned through the steel in a millisecond. A jet of molten copper injected itself into the crew compartment. The ammo rack inside the Tiger cooked off. The 60-ton turret was blown off the chassis like a toy. A pillar of fire shot up, nearly singeing Carpenter's landing gear as he pulled up. "Scratch 1 Tiger," Carpenter yelled over the radio. The German column froze. They had air superiority, they had armor, but they had just been humiliated by a kite with a bazooka. Word spread through the German lines, "Beware the crazy American." The Germans brought up Flakpanzers, anti-aircraft tanks, to hunt him down, but Carpenter was a tactical genius. He knew he couldn't fly high, so he flew low, insanely low. He flew at tree-top level, weaving between oaks and pines. He flew below the level of the telephone poles. He popped up over a hedge, fired a rocket, and dropped back down before the Germans could traverse their guns. It was guerrilla warfare in the sky. One German infantry unit reported that the plane was so low they could see the pilot's face. They fired at him not with anti-aircraft guns, but with rifles and Luger pistols. Carpenter later said the idea was to attack, get fast, get close, and get the hell out. He wasn't fighting like a pilot. He was fighting like a knife fighter in a bar brawl. But destroying tanks wasn't enough for Bazooka Charlie. He wanted to look the enemy in the eye. During a patrol near Nancy, France, he spotted a German armored car column. He fired his rockets, disabling the lead vehicle. The German crew bailed out, dazed and coughing in the smoke. They ran into a nearby wheat field to hide. Any other pilot would have radioed the coordinates to the infantry and flown home. Not Carpenter. He circled the field. He looked at the terrain. "I can fit," he muttered. He cut the engine and glided down. The L-4 bounced across the rough furrows of the wheat field, coming to a stop just 50 yards from the hiding Germans. Carpenter jumped out of the plane. He didn't have a rifle. He had a Colt .45 pistol in his hand and a cigar in his mouth. He sprinted toward the Germans. The German soldiers, seeing a crazy American pilot charging him alone, threw up their hands. They were terrified. They surrendered to a history teacher. Carpenter marched them back to his plane, radioed for a collection truck, and waited, guarding them with his pistol. He was the only pilot in the war to capture enemy ground troops on the ground. This bravery had a cost. Rosie the Rocketer was getting torn to shreds. The fabric skin of the plane offered zero protection.
After one mission, Carpenter landed and counted the holes. There was a bullet hole in the wing spar, a piece of shrapnel in the engine cowling, and a 9mm bullet hole in the floorboard right between his legs. If that bullet had been 2 inches to the left, Bazooka Charlie would have been history. His mechanic, Tech Sergeant Nardo, looked at the damage and shook his head. "Major, this plane is Swiss cheese. The structural integrity is gone. One strong wind and the wings will fold." Carpenter grabbed a roll of heavy-duty duct tape and a bucket of canvas patch dope. "Patch her up, Sergeant," Carpenter said. "It's just ventilation. Makes a fly faster." He climbed back into the cockpit, sitting on his flak vest, because he was more afraid of being shot in the butt than in the chest. He had 6 more rockets to fire, and the war wasn't over yet.
September 1944. The battle continues. Carpenter's reputation was growing. The Germans called him the Mad Major. The Americans called him the Legend. But his greatest day was yet to come. During a single sortie, Carpenter spotted a column of German armor trying to flank the U.S. 4th Armored Division. 2 Tiger tanks and a Panther were hiding in a wood line, waiting to ambush American Shermans. Carpenter didn't call for artillery. He didn't have time. He dove. He fired his first pair of rockets. Whoosh! The lead Tiger took a hit to the engine block. It ground to a halt, smoke pouring from the rear vents. Carpenter circled around. The German flak was intense. Tracers zipped through the fabric wings of Rosie, leaving small smoking holes. He lined up the second Tiger. Whoosh! A direct hit on the tracks. The tank spun out, exposing its side. Carpenter's wingman, another L-4 pilot inspired by him, finished it off. Carpenter had destroyed 2 heavy tanks in 10 minutes. He had saved an entire American tank platoon from ambush. He landed Rosie back at the muddy strip. He didn't brag. He just asked the mechanic, "Reload. There's one more out there."
By October 1944, the story was too good to keep quiet. A reporter from Stars and Stripes, the military newspaper, arrived at the airfield. He expected to find a rugged, cigar-chomping commando. Instead, he found a 32-year-old man with thinning hair who looked exactly like what he was, a high school history teacher. "Major," the reporter asked, "why do you do it? You fly a kite into a war zone." Carpenter wiped grease off his hands and smiled. "I just got tired of waiting for the war to end," he said. "The sooner we destroy their tanks, the sooner I can go back to grading papers." The article made him famous. The headline read, "Bazooka Charlie, the Tank Killer." But fame didn't stop the bullets. Rosie was damaged so badly that the mechanics eventually had to replace almost every part of her. She was a ship of Theseus, held together by patch dope and prayers. May 1945. The war in Europe ends. When the guns finally fell silent, the statisticians tallied the score. Major Charles Carpenter, flying a plane made of wood and fabric, was officially credited with destroying 6 German tanks. That includes 2 heavy Tiger tanks. He also destroyed dozens of armored cars and trucks. He achieved the status of a tank ace. Most tank commanders and Shermans didn't kill 6 tanks in the entire war. Carpenter did it from the air, with a weapon he built in a garage. He was awarded the Silver Star and the Air Medal, but his biggest reward was simply surviving. He had flown over the most heavily defended airspace in history, in a plane that could be brought down by a well-thrown rock. 1946, Urbana, Illinois. The bell rang. The students of Urbana High School shuffled into history class. They were loud, rowdy teenagers. The teacher stood at the chalkboard. He was a quiet man with a receding hairline. He wore a tweed jacket.
He wrote on the board, "The Civil War, 1861 to 1865. "Settle down," Mr. Carpenter said softly. The students sat down. They looked at their boring history teacher. They had no idea. They didn't know that just a year ago, this man was diving vertically at SS Panzer divisions. They didn't know he had killed Nazis with rockets strapped to a kite. Carpenter never bragged. He never told war stories in class. He just taught history. But sometimes when a plane flew overhead, he would look out the window, and for a split second, his eyes would turn into the eyes of a hunter. Charles Carpenter died in 1966 at the age of 53. For decades, his story was forgotten. But in 2017, a miracle happened. An aviation museum found an old rotten L-4 airframe in a barn in Austria. They checked the serial number, serial 43-29939. It was her. It was Rosie the Rocketer. She hadn't been scrapped. She had been hiding. The plane was restored to flying condition. Today, she flies at air shows, complete with the 6 bazooka tubes on her wings. She is a testament to the fact that you don't need the biggest gun or the thickest armor to win. You just need courage, duct tape, and a little bit of madness. If you loved the story of the Mad Major, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of American ingenuity. Class dismissed.